We're good? We're live? We're live.
Is it?
Uh, good morning, Mr. Arjun.
Morning. How's it going, Tony?
Great. Welcome to Socialite TV.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. I know you're having a really busy day today. You guys are working on the hackathon and all of that. Yeah, it's quite exciting.
Very
But,
exciting stuff. So.
Today we'd like to get to know you as one of the gentlemen behind the Alpha Direct brand.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, Get 400 brand. Yeah. So, can you please just take us through a bit of your life, growing up, where you grew up, so on and so forth.
So this may come as a little bit of a surprise, but I was actually I was born and raised in Lubatse.
Yeah.
So I went to school at Crescent School, if you know Crescent School in Lubatse.
Yeah.
And grew up there, spent most of my upbringing there. Now, one of the interesting things, I didn't have a traditional upbringing in the sense of most people. So what most people would have done is gone primary school, high school, and then primary school, then junior secondary, senior secondary, and so on and so forth, like how it was in those days. So in my case, Lobsec was the only senior secondary school in Lubatse. And my brother went to Lobsec actually, in those days, like, the facilities were not very good. It wasn't up to the standards my parents were hoping for. So my parents actually homeschooled me.
Yeah.
So I finished standard 7 and I was homeschooled for Form 1, Form 2, Form 3, Form 4 and Form 5 at home. Yeah. So my parents would actually sit with me, take the time out. It's a lot of work. Yeah. But one of the cool things was I actually managed to skip a lot of years. So I was done with my O-levels when I was 14.
14?
Yeah, 14.
Yeah.
So I finished my O-levels when I was 14. I wrote the London O-levels, not the Cambridge that most people wrote. Yeah. I wrote the January exams. Yeah. So the problem was that there were no admissions at UB because it was already January. Yeah. So what I decided to do was hey, listen, I'm going to be sitting here doing nothing until August. Yeah. So I joined GIPS at that time, and I just started my AAT. Did the first 2 modules. I did in those days it was foundation and intermediate. Yeah. And by that time it was already August, so I joined UB. Joined the Bachelor of Accounting course at the University of Botswana, and this was in 2001. Yeah. So I did my bachelor's degree, completed. I graduated one of the top in my cohorts. Yeah. So I was among the top. I graduated when I was 19 years old. 19. 19. And you had your degree. And I had my degree. Yeah. And then I got admitted into the University of Illinois in the United States of America. Yeah. So the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign is, I was very lucky to get in, but it's one of the best universities for accounting graduates in the world. Yeah. So I managed to get in. It was ranked actually number 1 that year when I joined. Yeah. It was very competitive. Yeah. So one of the things is, so at UB I was generally good. I mean, I wasn't the best, but I was among the top. I went there and it was a whole nother ball game. I mean, it was very super competitive.
International standards.
Yeah. So finished my masters. I graduated with my masters when I was 20 years old. Yeah. And then I decided, I was like, hey, what am I going to do? So a lot of people at that time were getting jobs. Yeah. I said, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to get into business. Yeah. So my passion when I was a kid was to become a doctor. Yeah. And somehow my life got sidetracked and I became an accountant. Yeah. So I was like, what can I do that kind of kindles my passion? Yeah. And at the same time, I'll enjoy. Yeah, because I mean, one of the things that I was lucky about was that my dad always told me, he said, hey, listen, whatever you do in your life, make sure you're doing something that you're enjoying every single day. You have to wake up in the morning, you got to enjoy what you're doing. Yeah. So I found a medical billing practice. So it was basically a medical practice management firm. Yeah. And what they do is It was a company that was basically working with doctors to manage their practices in America, right? And this was in the state of Florida. So I went to the owner of the business and I said, hey, listen, I don't have any money on me right now, but here's the deal. I will buy you out, right? And I will pay you back whatever amount you want for the business. But I'll use the proceeds of the business to pay you out. So I made the seller of the business basically give me a loan. So it was a very difficult move. I don't know, maybe I was just lucky to have that opportunity, but it worked out. I bought the business. The company was called Acumet Systems. It had been around for about 14 years. So the company for 14 years had been doing pretty much the same thing. You know, they were doing about maybe, you know, $14,000, $15,000 a month in revenues. So I bought the business over. Now I had a repayment every single month that I had to make. So I had no money for salary. I was living in the US. I was living on basically minimum wage. So my salary that I was taking for myself was like enough to basically I was living in the ghetto, right? In Florida. In Tampa, Florida. I was living literally in the ghetto. I was, my car was a hand-me-down from my brother. I asked my brother for his old car, and I had to pay him for that as well. so I was literally, I didn't even have money for petrol at the end of the month. It was really tight, you know, and I really hustled. I mean, I have to say I hustled a lot those initial couple of years. Then one day we were really lucky. This is one thing I'll tell all the young guys out there. You gotta always look at how you can network for opportunity. So my IT guy in my company came over one day to fix one of the servers or something like that, right? And we just got talking. I'm always friendly with everyone. So I sat down with him. I was like, hey, listen, you know, I'm struggling here. I'm trying to get a new business. What do I do and all that? And he told me, he said, hey, you know what, there's another company, there's a medical practice in St. Petersburg where I'm working, and I take care of their servers. And I just overheard a conversation that they were looking for a new practice administrator. So maybe I can hook you guys up. And so I said, listen, dude, you have to help me out. So I pushed, and we managed to win that contract. And that one contract alone was about $20,000 a month, $22,000 a month.
220,000.
220,000.
Yeah, and this current, it might have been higher.
It was much higher in those days. So, all of a sudden, I felt rich. You know what I mean? Now, all of a sudden, I'm balling. I've got more money than I know what to do with. I'm able to make the repayments on my loans. Everything's going great. Couldn't have been happier.
Quick one. Sure. What was the first thing that you got from when you started making that kind of money? What is the first thing that you bought?
Nothing. I never bought anything. I just moved into a nicer house. That was it. Actually, I lied. The truth is I actually did buy a house. Because I was paying rent until then. I told you I was living in the ghetto. So my brother and I almost got mugged. And that's how bad things were. I mean, it was really rough. It was a rough neighborhood. And the irony of it is we lived in Africa our entire lives. We never got mugged even once. Knock on wood. But in America, we got mugged. So that's how rough the neighborhood was. So anyway, I got myself a house. I got a really good deal on the house, and things were really looking up for me. I mean, I was really happy. My business was doing well. We employed more people. Now we built it up. So when I took over the company, we had 2 employees. I built it up now. We had about 6 employees.
Good revenue.
Yeah, good revenue. Doing pretty good business. And all of a sudden, my dad passes away. So this was 2007. I just, one fateful Saturday morning, I woke up in the morning, and I found out my dad passed away. So I was devastated. I was like, shit, what am I going to do? So now I had to fly back to Botswana. So my brother and I both flew back to Botswana. We went back to Lobase. We had, there was huge crowds. We had to manage the funeral. And now there was the big question. So my dad had a couple of businesses here in Botswana. He had an accounting firm, and he was a shareholder in, I'm sure Flowtech Pipes and Irrigation. So there was a lot of questions up in the air at that time. So what happens to his businesses? Who's going to take over? What's going to happen? And it was a very turbulent time. So I had to spend a lot of time back and forth in Botswana, back in the US, and it was really putting a strain on the business in the US because I had to attend board meetings over here in Botswana. And, finally I had to make a really difficult decision because even my mother was living alone here in Botswana. And she didn't have the immigration paperwork to move to America with us.
Yeah.
So it was a very tough decision, very tough time. I said, no, you know what, I'm going to sell the business in the US and I'm going to come back home. Relocate back to Botswana.
Okay. I'd like to now go back a bit into your past. I know we've gone past the stage, but growing up, you talk about your dad and how it was very devastating that you lost him at that time. Yeah. What kind of influence did he provide, or what kind of platform did he provide for you to get educated in terms of business? Did you go and
tremendous? Tremendous. Look, I'll tell you something. They say entrepreneurship is half nature and half nurture, whatever nonsense that is. The fact of the matter is, it's all about upbringing. I mean, I have a tremendous advantage over anyone else. I know that for a fact. Yeah. Because when I was a kid, from the day I was born, my dad would tell me, hey, listen, you know what, read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. This is what money is all about. This is how you make more money. This is how you make money. This is how you, raise capital. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. And I grew up looking at business. Yeah. There's no question in my mind that I have a huge advantage over anyone else. Yeah. You know what I mean? And I really hope that that this same kind of message that, if you're a parent out there and you've got young kids, teach them about money, because teach them about business, teach them about entrepreneurship, teach them about all these things, because it makes an enormous difference. Yeah. It makes an enormous difference,
Now, I also, I like to jump into that, the 14-year-old who then finishes O levels. How did you deal with the intimidation that we usually see when you're young, coming into people that are older than you, which is a trait that I think you still carry in business now, right?
Yeah. My whole life I've always been the youngest kid on the block. Yeah. So I started UB when I was 15. Yeah. You know what I mean? It was rough. It's really rough. I'd never been to high school. So, high school teaches you social etiquette, because if you go and talk some nonsense to someone, they're going to beat you up, right? That's what high school's all about. I never had that. So going into university, I was still a kid. I thought like a kid, I acted like a kid, I behaved like a kid. In some senses, I was a social outcast. You know what I mean? And it took me a bit of time but I think one of the most important things is, this is something my mom told me as a kid. My mom always told me that whenever you're in a situation, you have to keep adapting. Yeah. Nothing is stagnant. Nothing remains the same forever. Yeah. You have to always keep evolving yourself, looking around and learning from other people. Yeah. So I had a message with me from childhood. Yeah. So I was able to actually sit there when I was in university and say, listen, why am I such an outcast? You know what I mean? So I would look at other people and I'd say, okay, what can I learn from this person? What can I learn from this person? And kind of assimilate that into who I became, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. And fast forward, I know you moved from Botswana, and then you moved to the US, and then came back to Botswana after selling your business. Yeah. And then there's a chapter where you relocated to Mozambique. Can you tell us more about what happened there and why you saw addiction cases that are a bit dangerous?
All right. So this is actually really exciting. So I got an offer. I applied for a job with Motovac, right? And Motovac was it was kind of like a co-founding deal. They wanted to start Motovac in Mozambique. And they were looking for someone young, entrepreneurial, who could go out into this crazy country and set up an auto parts shop. So I volunteered and I said, listen, here's the deal. I'll bring my own money. I'd saved up some money by then. So I said, look, I'll bring my own money to the table and let's do this together. Yeah. Now, when I went to, so when I went to Mozambique, I was excited. I was like, man, you know what? I'm gonna go out into the Wild West and I'm gonna do some crazy things. You know what I mean? So I started motorbike in Mozambique. This was 2012, and it was crazy. Mozambique is. I still think Maputo is my favorite city in the world. Yeah. It's a beautiful city, very friendly people. All that stuff is great, but it's also the wild west. Anything can happen. Anything can happen. And one of the craziest things was that there's kidnappings there. Yeah. I'm not sure if you know about that, but they basically kidnap business people there. Yeah. So if you're an entrepreneur and somebody knows about you, right, they would actually come and kidnap you, hold you ransom, and extort money from that. And I thought it was just something that was happening here and there and all that stuff. Until one day I actually spoke to a couple of my friends and I found out that their parents had been kidnapped. Yeah. And I was like, man, this is...
It's real.
Yeah, it's real. It's real. So, it's one of those places where it's kind of ironic because there's no armed robberies in your houses. Yeah. People don't break in. Like, petty crime doesn't exist in Maputo. That's the irony of it. Yeah. So you can feel safe, like, you'd find women jogging on the side of the road at night. Yeah. No problem. But they had kidnappings, drug peddling. I mean, it's like the kind of gangs that they have in Mozambique is on another level. I mean, it's like, international syndicates and it's organized crime and corruption.
How did you take the skill that you learned in adaptation? You moved to the US, you were able to start a business. Now you move to Maputo, Mozambique, and you have to set up a spare shop. And I think at the time it was one of the first spare shops.
Yes, it was.
In the
it was the first real spare shop in Maputo. You had a couple of other small, like small shops where guys would come and sell, duplicate spares and stuff like that. But like this was a real spare shop in Maputo.
So what was your fear then? We have to admit that you up and left Botswana.
Yeah.
And what was the biggest fear when you got there? Again, now it becomes real. Now it's actually here.
Okay.
And you actually see these things.
So look, I'm actually a bit of an adventurous person. Yeah. Like, what's the point? Let me put it this way. Okay, we're all born on one day. We're all gonna die someday. You're gonna die someday. I'm gonna die someday, right? Now, what do you really take with you? Do you take the money that you make in your lifetime? No. When you die, it's going to be here. Your kids are going to blow it or someone's going to blow it, right? Yeah. The only thing that you take with you is your experiences. Yeah. So I wanted to experience as much of life as possible. Yeah. And even today, I still do. Yeah. I want to experience everything in life. Yeah. So I was excited about going to Mozambique. It was something that I was like, hey, I'm really curious what it's going to be like to live in Maputo, Mozambique, So I learned Portuguese. Yeah. That was the hardest part. 6 months I became fluent in Portuguese. Yeah. So that was not easy.
Through school or the people?
No, just you have to learn it. Yeah. That's the funny thing because, okay, look, so my Setswana is horrible. Okay, even though I've lived here my whole life, I hate to say this, but my Setswana is actually horrible. Yeah. And the reason is just because everybody speaks to me in English. Yeah. Right? But in Mozambique, what happens is nobody will speak to you in English. You have to learn Portuguese. Yeah. Otherwise, you sink. So that was a bit hard, but it was exciting, in its own sense.
In its own way.
And I think one of the things that I was really worried about was the corruption. Because I'm not used to corruption. I'm not used to living in a corrupt environment. And I don't do corruption. It goes against my ethical codes. Yeah. I grew up with a very strong set of values. So now all of a sudden, when you're in a country where you cannot do, and you're doing business, so everyone is, it's just a way of life, and to have to stick to your belief system, to say, no, this is not okay. I refuse to do it. At the detriment of your own business, at the detriment of your own self as well, where you're getting threats, you're getting, those kind of things. You have to, in the face of adversity, you have to stick to your values. You need to know what your values are and you have to stick to them.
So you really kept rigid.
Yes, I did. Yeah. I did. And it was hard. It was hard. Because corruption is a way of life there. it just happens. Everybody is corrupt. The police are corrupt. You know, I mean, my first experience there was I came with B plates. I came driving down from Botswana, and I had Botswana plates. So police saw me, and they came up. All the police that carry AK-47s. So they come and they tap on your glass with an AK-47, and they're like, you're not wearing your seatbelt at the back, or they'll come up with some nonsense. Your tire treads are worn out, so give me $2,000, you know, and that's 2,000 rands or $2,000 or whatever the case. Then you have to put your foot down and say no. Take me to jail if you want to take me to jail. I'm not paying.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, yeah. Again, I would say the second lesson that I learned there was just that you have to stick to your values. You have to understand what your principles are, understand what your values are, stick to them.
Yeah.
And while it was a great experience, the reason the reason never really worked out perfectly was for that very same reason. It was just doing business there was completely against my value system. It was against everything that I believed in. You know.
So fast forward, the business grew in Mozambique, and did you sell it, or are you still a
No, sold it out of it.
Yeah.
So look, you should be the first person to understand that. Like, everyone should understand this, right? Life is a journey. Okay. There will be failures, there will be successes. I've had my share of successes, I've had more than my share of failures. Okay, I've failed in a lot of businesses, also succeeded in a lot of businesses. The point is not that you should succeed in everything you do, but with every failure you have to learn and say, listen, okay, this is what I've learned from this, this is what I'm going to do next time, this is what I'm going to not do next time. You know?
But of all the failures, which one to this day still has you? I really feel. Which one was it for you?
I would have to say it was Mozambique. I mean, look, because it was a combination of things, man. I mean, like, something like you see stuff you don't see every day. Like, I was driving up north and I met a guerrilla military, they had civil war there. So I actually I had to pass through an armed convoy and met armed guards and it's stuff. Stuff that in Botswana we never imagine. We never even think about.
So after Mozambique, then you relocated back?
No, actually, I took a year off. All right, I went to India. I'd never, even though I'm of Indian origin, I had spent very little time in India, and I needed to kind of refresh my soul. So I went to the Himalayas. I got a spiritual teacher to learn about meditation, yoga, all these kind of things. So I took a whole year as a sabbatical, where I just went and I had to refresh my soul, and I wanted to learn about philosophy and all these kind of things. So that was an incredible thing for me. It put my whole life into context, and it made me understand what is really important in life, what is important to me. And I came out of that, and by that time my brother had actually just started Alpha Direct, and he'd been telling me for some time, saying, "Hey, come, let's put all our energy into this," And I've been saying, yeah, I'll come. And then when the time was right, I said, yeah, okay, the time is right now. So came back, and we started. Alpha Direct, when I joined, was still in Commerce Park. We had a small little shed. We were working out of a warehouse basically, and we were just getting things going. We had a lot of issues, with regards to our systems and stuff like that. So I joined in as the Chief Operating Officer, and my role essentially is to from the inside. So the CEO really looks at the business from an external standpoint with the external stakeholders, and the COO basically looks at the internal organization, the operations, how things work, interactions between departments, systems, software and systems, and so on and so forth.
But at the beginning in building Alpha Direct, what brought the courage? Because I know you've had a lot of conversations about this. What brought the courage to then venture into insurance, which is really an unpopular field? And you guys wanted to be like the first direct insurer?
Yes.
What brought those decisions up?
So I'll tell you something. Like, the irony of it is that neither my brother was the CEO, not myself. We're not insurance people.
Yeah.
We're accountants.
Yeah.
We're both CPAs,
Yeah.
right? We're chartered accountants.
Mm.
We have nothing to do with insurance. We don't know anything. We didn't know the first thing about insurance.
Yeah.
But what happened was we'd seen in America we owned a brokerage, an insurance brokerage, and we were basically doing life insurance brokering there. So we looked a lot at how the American, and I think that was one of the big things for us. Living in America actually opened up our eyes to what is actually possible. Because when you kind of restrict your scope to just Botswana, right? Now the problem is you're living your entire life not seeing what is actually possible.
Yeah.
You're just seeing what is being done,
Yeah.
right? But when you go out into the world, you actually learn about what is actually possible.
Yeah.
So we looked at one of the companies we learned a lot from was Geico.
Yeah.
Geico is
one of the biggest.
The biggest insurance company in the world, I believe. It's owned by this guy. It's owned by Berkshire Hathaway, which is owned by, what's his name again?
Warren Buffett.
Warren Buffett. Yeah, Warren Buffett. So we looked at a lot at that business and what makes that business successful. And we learned that the main thing was the direct model.
Yeah.
So they basically said, listen, what is the need for an intermediary in a transaction that involves an underwriter and a customer, right? So we also felt that, in Botswana as well, there was really no need for an intermediary. Intermediaries serve a role. I'm not going to say no. They do serve a role. But in majority of transactions where it's just plain and simple, clean-cut insurance, like your domestic policies, for example, there really is value addition in going direct, because you get to go direct with the insurance company. You cut out the commissions that are involved in the middle, and we're able to offer cheaper premiums, more direct personalized service. We can make decisions on claims much easier. So we found that there was tremendous value addition. But the question was, we didn't know anything about insurance. And I think in some way, when the stars align, things just fall into place, which is really what happened here. So we were thinking about starting an insurance company, and at that time, someone somewhere just came up and said, we found, I have a cousin or someone that has been in an insurance company, one of the Gulf insurance companies in the Emirates for 40 years, and he's just retiring, so he's looking for an opportunity. And we said, hey, this is our guy. So we basically brought him on as a mentor. Insurance. How do you reinsure? How do you do this? How do you do that? We learned everything that we know about insurance from him. And he was our principal officer when we started the company. And when we grew a little bit bigger, we localized the position. Now Kumo Patswane is our principal officer, and he's also our operations manager. And so we had to learn, on the run. Yeah.
You just took the risk and
took the risk, jumped in, and figured the rest out.
Very interesting. You pretty much lived your world diversely in the US and Mozambique, and now you're in Alpha, which is quite successful in the insurance realm. I'd like to now get your thought on the current economy of Botswana. Where do you see the value? Where do you see the pockets? Where do you advise young, old, and people that are retiring to look at, and what should they look out for?
I think Africa as a whole is going through one of its most exciting transformational points ever. Okay? And as Botswana, and in Botswana, we are the best positioned to take advantage of this. And I'll tell you why. Because there is no economy in Africa that is as democratic, as peaceful, as conducive to business as Botswana is. So we're sitting on a platform where we already have a huge advantage. Okay, compared to, if you were born in Sierra Leone, or I'm just pulling out countries for example, you'd be at a tremendous disadvantage with setting up a a global organization versus being in Botswana. So we have the best potential, the best platform here. So the way we view it is that we don't see Botswana as the market. We see Africa as a market. So we've got a Pan-African vision about where we want to go with Africa, right? And I think a lot of youngsters, it would actually bode well for a lot of youngsters to have a similar point of view. Because it's plain and simple. We have a problem in Botswana in that we have a very small population. So to make a big enough business, to make anything that you have as an idea, to take it to market in just Botswana is a big challenge to reach feasibility. So you have to have a Pan-African view and you have to think much broader. But I think borders are collapsing across Africa. You know, we're becoming one continent. And as the more and more we become as one continent, it's going to become easier and smoother to do business.
To explore opportunities. Yeah. Now we're reaching, we're almost at the end of our segment. We have a really interesting segment. It's called Vent or Motivate.
Okay.
Yeah. I don't know if you're going to vent or you're going to motivate. I don't know which one you prefer.
Okay. I'll motivate. I'll motivate. Yeah.
So what do you have to say to people out there?
All right. So youngsters, I think my biggest thing is for youngsters. Okay. I don't know if you remember a time, a bygone era, right? When we were kids. I mean, I'm not sure, most of you guys are probably too young to know this, but when we were kids, Botswana was not the same place, okay? Things did not move as fast as they do today. We couldn't have imagined something like the Botswana Innovation Hub when we were kids, because we could not think that big. The restriction was not on money, it was not on ability, it was not on intellectual potential, nothing. The limitation was just on our ability to open up our minds and say, this is actually possible. Nobody can prevent you from being your best. You are just as intelligent, if not more intelligent than anyone else on this planet. You are probably more intelligent than me. You're more intelligent than 99% of other people in this world. You have all the abilities that anyone else can. You just have to open your mind, look at the potential that rests within you, and you have to make it happen. That's really all it is.
No, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Alpha.
Thanks for having me over.
For coming for this very important interview.
Sure.
I hope a lot of people learned a lot and will tune in to our next episode.
Great. Thank you.